In this video, we're going to be learning about solving complex equations. This video has both parts 1 and 2 included. So first, take some time to figure out this problem. And now we're going to ask, how does solving equations relate to using the order of operations? So we use PEMDAS backwards, since we're undoing the order of operations. To solve for a missing variable. Or value. And we call this SADMAP. So think of them as going hand in hand. One is for simplifying and one is for going backwards to solve for the variable. So what steps do you follow to solve a complex equation? So the first step is to distribute if you can. In this case, there's nothing to distribute, so let's move on to the second step. The second step is combine like terms if you can. Let's see if we have any like terms to combine. So I see on this left side the 4b and the 6b. Although 3 and 7 are like terms, they're not on the same side, so I'm not going to worry about combining them yet. So 4b plus 6b is 10b. Minus 3 equals 7. Now we're going to use PEMDAS backwards or SADMAP so we can isolate that variable. So addition and subtraction comes first, so I'm going to add 3 to both sides to undo the subtraction. I get 10b equals 10. Now remember, 10b is really like 10 times b, so to undo multiplication, I'm going to divide. When I divide, this goes to 1. This also actually goes to 1, so b equals 1. And the last step you can do is check your answer. So to do this, I would plug back into the original equation. So I'd plug a 1 back into this original. So I would say 4 times 1 minus 3 plus 6 times 1. Is that equal to 7? Well, 4 times 1 is 4. Minus 3 plus 6 times 1 is 6 equals 7. 4 minus 3 is negative 1. 1. Yikes. Plus 6 equals 7. So 7 equals 7. So my answer is correct. So in these examples, let's try to solve each equation for b. Remember, our first step is to distribute if you can. In this first example, I need to distribute right here. So negative 2 times b is a negative 2b. Negative 2 times negative 9 is a positive 18. Plus 7 equals 3. Now let's combine like terms. This 18 and 7 are like terms on the same side. So I'll say 18 plus 7, well that's 25. And now reverse PEMDAS or SADMAP. Subtraction comes first. Negative 2b equals 3 minus 25, which is negative 22. Divide both sides by negative 2. So I get b equals 11. And then you can always go back, plug 11 back in, make sure it works. Next step, next problem. Nothing to distribute, so let's combine like terms. I see this b term right here, and I see another b term right here. 4/5 b minus 1/5 b. If we remember how to subtract fractions, we subtract the numerators as long as our denominators are the same. So 4 minus 1 is a 3/5 b. Plus 8 equals 20. Now we're ready to use SADMAP. Addition and subtraction comes first, so let's undo this addition. 3/5 b equals 12. Now remember, we have that fraction, so we can multiply by the reciprocal. So we can multiply by 5/3. Cancels on this side. B equals, let's add a 1 to the denominator. 12 times 5 is 60. 1 times 3 is 3. So B is 20. Last up, you might panic because you see this problem. It's got a lot of funky decimals, but you're going to do the same thing. So 12b plus 3.88b, just plug it into your calculator if you're not sure. So that's going to give us a 15.88b minus 1.33 equals 8.62. Again, these are they're only decimals, so just add them in your calculator. So we're going to add 1.33 to both sides. We get 15.88b equals 9.95. Now the last step is just to divide. So we end up with b is equal to 0.62657. So we'll just say, round up and say 3. All right. Now let's try some word problems. So a rectangular pool has a length of x feet and a width that is 3 less than the length. If the perimeter is 102 feet, what are the dimensions of the length and width of the pool? So let's say x is the length. If x is the length, then our width is 3 less than that. So our width is x minus 3. Now remember, perimeter for a rectangle is 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. So let's see if we can write an equation for that. 2 times the length would be 2x plus 2 times the width would be 2 times x minus 3 is equal to the total perimeter, which is 102. Now let's try to solve. The first thing we're going to do is distribute. So we get 2x plus 2 times x plus 2 times negative 3 is a minus 6 equals 102. Next up, combine like terms if you can. 2x plus 2x is 4x minus 6 equals 102. Now use SADMAP. Add 6. 4x equals 108. Divide both sides by 4. X is equal to 27 feet. Now be careful. We need to make sure we're answering the question. It wants to know what's the length and what's the width. So the length was just x, so the length is 27 feet. And the width was 3 less than that. So our width is 27 minus 3, or 24 feet. Next up, you and your 3 friends go to the Big E. You each spend $3 on food and buy a stamp for unlimited rides. If the total cost for you and your friends is $32, how much does the stamp for unlimited rides cost? The question's asking about this cost of the stamp, so let's make that our variable. That's what I don't know. Now let's see if we can come up with an equation for the total cost. So how many of this are there? There's 4 of us, right? You plus 3 would be 4 people. We each spend $3 on food and each buy a stamp. So each of us have a 3 plus x, right? They have our $3 plus our stamp, but there's 4 of us, so let's multiply this by 4. And how much did we spend? We spent $32. Now let's try to solve by first distributing. 4 times 3 is 12. 4 times x is 4x equals 32. Subtract 12. 4x equals 20. Divide by 4. So x is 5. And our answer is actually $5 per stamp. Now here's another question. what if the equation has variables on both sides? So we'll see we've got m's on this left side and m's on this right side. So our strategy is going to be get the variables all on the left side first. So let's first try to combine like terms to make our life easier. 8m minus 6m is 2m equals m minus 8. Now I need to move that m to the other side. Remember, this m is really like a 1m. To move it to the other side, I will just subtract it from this side and subtract it from this side. So 2m minus 1m is 1m equals negative 8. Or sometimes we just like to say m equals negative 8. Now let's try solving each equation for m. So in this first one, I want everything on the left to have m's in it. So I'll add 8m to both sides to get rid of it on the right. Negative 4m plus 8m will give us positive 4m minus 12 equals 4. Now we're ready to solve as usual like we've been practicing. So we'll add 12. 4m equals 16. And then we'll divide both sides by 4. M equals 4. This next one, before we try to get the m's on the same side, we have to remember to distribute first because these m's are kind of trapped inside right now, inside the parentheses. So negative 12m, negative 12 times negative 1 is positive 12, equals, we have to distribute on the left too, the right too. So negative 10 times 1 is negative 10. Negative 10 times m is negative 10m. Now let's move this term on the right to the other side. So plus 10m plus 10m. We end up with negative 2m plus 12 equals negative 10. Now subtract 12 from both sides. We're just solving as usual. Negative 2m equals negative 22. Divide both sides by negative 2. M equals 11. Last up, we have another problem. We see parentheses, so we should first think to distribute. Let's distribute on this side, and maybe we'll combine like terms on this side. Might do it 2 and 1. You can always just do one step at a time if that's okay. So let's distribute. Negative 7 times 8 is negative 56. Negative 7 times negative 1m is a positive 7m. Now let's move this m to the other side. (40) minus 12m equals negative 56. Now we're ready to solve as usual. Subtract 40 from both sides. Negative 12m equals negative 96. Divide both sides by negative 12. M equals 8. Now let's see if we can practice some word problems. You are looking for a dog spa to take care of your dog. Each time you visit a spa, you ask them to give your dog a bath. There's 2 companies you're considering. Golden Dog Care charges $20 for each visit, plus $5 for each bath. Super Dog Delight charges $15 for each visit and a $60 fee for an unlimited number of baths. You need to know how many visits will make the 2 companies charge the same amount. Let's define our variables. They're asking how many visits, so that's what our variable is going to be. Number of visits. All right, let's start with Golden Dog Care. $20 for each visit, plus $5 for each bath. So if we're visiting and we're getting a bath, that's going to be 20 plus 5 per visit. Now, the amount that Super Dog Delight charges is $15 for each visit, 15x, plus a $60 fee. Now it says write an equation that determines when the two companies charge the same amount. If this is how much one charges and this is how much the other charges, and we want to know when they're equal, let's just set them equal to each other. So 20 plus 5x equals 15x plus 60. 20 plus 5 is 25. Now let's move everything over to, all the x's over to one side. 10x equals 60. Divide both sides by 10. So x is 6 visits. So at 6 visits, it's going to cost the same if you went 6 to one place, 6 to the other place. Now, let's try to help Tim. So Tim is choosing between two cell phone plans that offer the same amount of data. AT&T charges $39.99 per month with data overage costing 45 cents per gigabyte. Verizon's plan costs $44.99 per month with data overage at 40 cents per gigabyte. How many additional gigabytes of data will it take for the two plans to cost the same? It's asking how many additional gigabytes. So let's make x the number of additional gigabytes. Now let's figure out how much AT&T charges us. They're going to charge us $39.99 in a month plus 45 cents per gigabyte or per x. Verizon charges us $44.99 plus 40 cents per gigabyte. And we want to know when they charge the same amount. So if we want to know when they're equal, let's set them equal to each other. $39.99 plus 0.45x, $44.99 plus 4x. Now let's solve. We don't have to distribute, so let's just move the x's over to the other side. $39.99 plus 0.05x equals $44.99. Now we're going to subtract $39.99 from both sides. So we get 0.05x equals $44.99 minus $39.99, which is just 5. So 5 divided by 0.05 will mean we have 100 gigabytes. All right. Now here's the second section, so make sure you take time to do this warm-up. And we're going to talk about some special cases. What are two special cases that could happen? Let's see in this first one, it says m minus 1 equals m minus 1. What do you kind of notice about this? You might notice it looks the same on each side. But let's try to solve it. Let's move this m over to the other side. Well, m minus m is 0. So both of these cancel out. So we get -1 equals -1. Is this a true statement? Yes, it's almost obviously true. So this means any value for m will be 2. You can even try it. So plug in 5 for m. 5 minus 1 equals 5 minus 1. Of course it does. So our answer is all real numbers. And the abbreviation for real numbers is this R. It's actually called blackboard bold. Back in the day, they couldn't type in bold or write in bold on a chalkboard. So we kind of add this extra line to the R to show that it's bold, which is kind of cool. Let's see what happens in the second case. Let's just try to solve. I subtract 5m from both sides. Notice they both cancel out on each side. So I'm left with 2 equals 7, which is not true. So this means no value for m will be true. Try it. Let's plug in 1 for m. So that means 2 plus 5 equals 7 plus 5. That doesn't make any sense, right? There's nothing, if I have the same value and I add 2 to it or add 7 to it, they're never going to be equal. So our answer for this is no solution. Now we get to this thing called literal equations. So literal equations are solving for some variable where there's basically all variables involved. This happens a lot in physics when you're trying to solve for one variable or the other. Maybe distance, maybe time, right? So we're going to solve these the same way that you've always solved them. It's just that you can't really simplify them. So in this case, I want to solve for x. Let's ask ourselves, what's happening to x? It's being multiplied by m and b is being added to it. Just like usual, I'm going to use SADMAP to solve. The first thing I'm going to do is subtract b from both sides. Now this is where it might seem weird, right? You're saying, well, what's y minus b? You don't need to find an answer for it. You can just say, well, y minus b is y minus b equals mx. Now m's being multiplied to x. I'm going to divide both sides by m. And you're going to say, well, what's y minus b divided by m? I really don't care what it is. It's just y minus b divided by m. So now I've solved for x. So what I'm going to do is say x is equal to y minus b over m. I just flipped it around so it was in the other spot. Now in this case, e equals mc squared. You might recognize this from science. It says to solve for m. Well, what's happening to m? It's being multiplied by c squared. So I'm going to divide both sides by c squared. When I do that, I get e over c squared equals m. I solve for m. So I'm just going to rewrite this as m equals e over c squared. Let's try 2 more. X equals y times k over b. Solve for y. All right, well, first, what's happening? I'm going to multiply both sides by b. So I get bx equals yk. I'm trying to get y alone, and it's being multiplied by k, so I'll divide by k. So bx divided by k equals y. So this means y equals bx over k. So when you think about it, you already know how to solve these equations, and they're actually a little bit easier because you don't need a calculator to simplify numbers or subtract or multiply. All right, in this problem, we're going to solve for k. So k is over here. It's being multiplied by something, and something's being added to it. So let's subtract yx from both sides. So u minus yx equals kx. Now it's being multiplied by x, so I'm going to divide everything by x. So k equals u minus yx over x.